Hey, Deb, you're muted if you were talking to us.
Thanks, Dawn. All right. Can you hear me now? Okay, so good afternoon and welcome everyone to the ESSER 2 webinar. Thank you for joining us today. This session is being recorded and posted and will be available to you on the CARES Act webpage on the DESE website. This is the link, and this presentation has also been posted on the CARES Act webpage. As you know, we have received $502+ million to distribute among our LEAs that receive Title I funds. And those allocations have already been posted on the DESE website on the allocations page. It was also noted in Commissioner Memo FIN-21-026. Be sure to look for the ESSER 2 funds, which are source funds 6781. Remember that allocations are there for you to begin your budgeting in eFinance. And also this is a reimbursement program. So reimbursements happen on the second Saturday of each month. The priorities of ESSER 2 funds are learning and health. And when Secretary DeVos did the webinar with the state, she said that when we come out on the other side of this pandemic and with these funds, that we should be in a better place, that we have thought through, been very strategic in our planning to ensure that there is good air quality, that there's good health for our students and our teachers, but also that learning has been addressed, and that does include learning loss. So what can we think about in the future that's going to make our schools a better place for our students? In the application that is available online, you will see that the focus areas are pretty much the same as they were under ESSER 1 funds. However, there is some updated language. If you recall, in the ESSER 1 funds, it talked a lot about reopening schools and things that were appropriate for that time. And the wording in these uses of funds have been updated. So there have been some that were kind of broken out and more emphasis applied to them. One of those you'll see under direct support, student support, to address the learning loss as noted here. And the other one that is new is a area that we created into a complete focus area. And that's looking at air quality and limiting the transmission of viruses through upgrades within the facilities. And we'll go into great detail on both of these. Your funding codes for ESSER 2 are upgraded. And if you pull the that document from the website, or you need to pull it from here, what you're going to see is ESSER 2 funds must be kept separate from ESSER 1 funds. We are required to make different reports. So ESSER 2 funds, source of funds, is 6781. And as you pull that document up, you will see that those new items that I previously mentioned have been given program codes appropriate to them. And those program codes have been highlighted in yellow so that you can quickly see those. Timeline for ESSER 2 funds. Now,
hey, Ms. Kaufman.
Yes.
Ms. Kaufman, are you sharing your screen? Do you have a presentation that you're sharing right now?
well, I thought I did.
Yeah, it came up a
not.
minute ago and then it went down. So if you'll go back and grab that presentation, I think everybody right now, I think they're all seeing our beautiful faces.
All right. Well, let me thank you for saying that so I can get it back up again.
Great.
Better?
We can see the presentation now. Yes,
Perfect.
thank you.
Thank you. So ESSER 2 funds are, while you could go back and recover any of your expenses, COVID-related expenses from March 13th through 2020, actually with ESSER 2 funds, because our books are closed from the previous year, March through June, you really can only go back till July 1 in reality to capture those expenses. So that's why, if you recall, back with with ESSER 1, we had those CV marked until you could get those reimbursed. Funds for ESSER 2 must be obligated by September 30th, 2023, and the funds must be spent by December 30th, 2023. Now, I put these side by side because in the communication to us from the U.S. Department of Ed, they've said, be sure to tell school districts, get your ESSER 1 money spent first before looking at your ESSER 2. But we know good strategic planning involves looking at the entire pot of money, just knowing that we need to go ahead and expend those ESSER 1 funds by the appropriate timeline so that we don't lose the opportunity for these funds. Now, looking at the application or addendum, because we already have an application on file in our ESSER folder in InduStar for you, all we need to do is come back in and add an addendum to that application. That addendum is available on the CARES Act webpage, and we would ask that you get that addendum completed, and I'll walk you through how to do that, and post it in your ESSER folder in InduStar by February 1st. We're moving very quickly. It's a very easy to fill out addendum, but it needs to be in the folder and reviewed by our office before we can start reimbursement of ESSER 2 funds. Meantime, you are developing your budget in eFinance. You don't have to upload a budget anywhere else because we have approved and very limited funding codes for ESSER 2. Therefore, you don't have to do any other budgeting anywhere else other than in eFinance. So in looking at these 5 focus areas, the first one is food security. We've talked about that a little bit before, but I'd like to ask Suzanne Davidson and Dr. Pfeffer if there's any guidance that you would provide around food security for the coming months.
Hi, Deb. Thank you. And Child Nutrition would like to thank the agency for choosing food security as one of the focus groups. The Child Nutrition staff in the local district has not only shown their dedication to feeding children, but there's an incredible imagination and innovations used during the 2021 school year to provide meals to their in-person students and their virtual students. To date, we've had about 40 districts that have had to develop a plan to provide meals during short-term closures and pivots to virtual learning. I've captured a couple of best practices for each one of those, and then some things to keep in mind. For your in-person students, we've had schools that the entire child nutrition staff has been quarantined because of COVID, and there was not other schools within the district that could move staff from one kitchen site to the other to prepare meals for those students at that site that the kitchen staff was closed. We've also had a limited, very few, but we've had some districts that have had to collaborate and partner with a neighboring district to provide meals for those students. This has worked out really well with those 2 districts. We recommend that they do an MOU between the 2 districts so that they know exactly who's providing the meal and claiming the meals. So if you have an interest in that, please give us a call. For the virtual students, a lot of districts are serving meals or sending meals home for pickup once or twice a week. They've coordinated the pickup times with other student services that may require the parents to come in and for the district. And then they've also had to, in some districts, they've had to vary the pickup times because the times that they had set for the initial pickup was not working for the parents to be able to work and then get to the school and pick up the meals for the students. As a guide to the parents, we suggest that you provide a menu for those meals that you're sending home. And this menu will let the parents know what food items go together to constitute a meal. One of the things that we've got to ensure, though, is food safety in the meals that are picked up, just like we ensure food safety for meals that are served on site. We suggest that instructions be included in the food box, that the items be labeled as to what needs to be refrigerated. And if there's heating or cooking instructions, please provide that for the items for food to be consumed. And then always be ready to respond and possibly defend negative social media related to meals provided to students. We've had some districts that have had to combat some, like I say, negative social media. A couple of important things to keep in mind is that the current USDA waivers are set to expire June 30th, 2021. All districts at this time have opted into the waivers. And so we do not know what waivers USDA may put forward after June 30th or extend. Participation in school meals has slowed down for 2021, but the reimbursement sent home to districts has increased because of being able to provide meals at no charge to the family, but then be able to claim all of those meals at the free reimbursement rate. So when the waivers go away, I know those options will go away at that time. Just as a fact, the normal reimbursement that we normally send home or send to districts, excuse me, runs between $15 and $18 million a month that we pass through down to the local district. This current year, we've had months that have had $20 to $23 million of reimbursement passed down. So those are just some things I'd like to share, but if any questions or comments or need help, please give us a call, 501-324-9502. Thank you, Deb.
Thanks, Suzanne. Appreciate that. The second focus area is direct student support and continuous learning opportunities. And, you know, I said at the beginning that the goal is to make learning better on the other side of this. So Dr. Pride, Ms. Smith, anything that you would add to give us directions or ideas for thought?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Kaufman, and good afternoon, everyone. You know, this is a big area, and as you're thinking about direct support for students and continuous learning opportunities, there are many areas where you may want to give thought. One area would be updates and upgrade to curriculum resources that would support teaching and learning. Specifically, I know there may be needs for upgrades of core curriculums to address supports for reading programs that align to the science of reading. Other things that you may think about would be dyslexia interventions. Are there needs there for training, upgrades, supplemental resources to make sure that interventions are meeting the components of dyslexia interventions? We've got lots of resources on our RISE page related to the science of reading, should you want to review those. And of course, you know, there are lots of trainers in districts that could support some needs in those areas. We also have a page dedicated to dyslexia that you could visit. Other opportunities would be maybe to supplement some parts of the curriculum, whether that's the core, whether that's for tiers 2 and 3, digital aspects that would really be adaptive and support direct student support that's more personalized. So that's also an area. When thinking about mathematics, there are also opportunities to support core curriculum programs or to upgrade those, include digital options, really think about supports to learn the basics that will lead to success in Algebra 1, maybe an area to think about. And I know as we really think about some potential learning loss that we're going to experience in the coming months and even maybe years, really thinking about what are those intervention supports that may need some upgrades or just some additions that you may not have for tiers 2 and 3, really thinking about what are our students' needs across content areas. I know some other things that you may want to think about may be related to social emotional learning supports in schools and in classrooms. Now we're in the age where we've got to integrate those pieces. We've got our Guide for Life work that can lead you to really understand those foundational pieces related to proficiencies, knowledge, and experiences that students need to be successful day to day and even after they leave classrooms for the real world. So that may be an area of emphasis. And we've got lots of resources to support those areas and really making sure that our students have those soft skills that they need as they exit. I would say maybe some other areas may be just in resources that supplement programs like the codable text, things of that nature. So there are so many opportunities across our social emotional needs, across academic needs that may be of interest. And I don't know if Stacy wants to add, but if you need some help, just reach out. We've got lots of ideas to support your needs.
Yeah, Dr. Pride, you did a great job hitting on several of the curriculum things. Other things to think about could possibly be, how do you extend learning beyond the school day, before school, after school, weekend programs? How do you create community partnerships to be able to extend that learning? So this is a category that gives you kind of a wide breadth of things that you can think about and choose from. So thank you, Dr. Pride.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. You know, along those lines, this is about credit recovery. This is about summer intervention programs for students before school starts next year. It's really thinking outside of the box of how do you address the needs of your kids. It could even be hiring people to assist, do tutoring with individual or small group kids. And so once again, I'll come back to that. How are we better on the other side of this? Not how are we complaining, but how did we solve the issues that arose during this pandemic? An additional focus area that I know several of you took advantage of with ESSER 1 funds is technology. Don Benton, can you talk to us about technology needs?
You bet. Thank you, Deb, for allowing me to have the opportunity to speak. And I'm sharing my email address with everyone in the panelist view and the attendee view. So if you have any questions, when ESSER 1 funds were released, it was really kind of a quick fix. And we were in a really big hurry up mode during all of the unknown. Now that we have a much better grasp on what's going on and ESSER 2 funds are being released, we really get a chance now to really step back and plan for a longer term. So let's think on terms of long term and something that's sustainable. I urge you guys to be really careful of the great deals and all the barrage of vendors. They're going to be calling upon you guys to spend your money with them. We have, amazingly enough, most of the vendors started contacting me before we even knew exactly how much money was going to be dispersed. I want to know how they could get in with schools and do statewide purchasing and all that. So as school level folks, you guys are going to get beat up by a lot of vendors. So be really, really cautious of that, but be thinking long term. And I was talking to Deb earlier and I was thinking about how many schools have been dealing with just this ton of additional technology. Make sure you have the necessary supports in place for that. And if you're going to buy technology, make sure you have professional development in place. Make sure you have the additional technological supports that expand off of that or are impacted by that. Reach out to your co-op TCs, your tech coordinators, and find out what other schools are doing. And you guys may be able to leverage pricing if you're working together with other co-ops or other schools from different co-ops as well. And vet all your vendors, vet all of them. If they promise you that they can get you Chromebooks by tomorrow, you might really want to check into that, because I find that to not be true. And I know that a lot of you guys are still waiting on orders from the original ESSER 1 funds. And we see that in some of the funding disbursements. We realize that some folks are waiting for a few, some are waiting for a few hundred, and some for several thousand. So be patient with that. We understand that there's still a delay on a lot of those types of technologies. Some technologies are freeing up and they're coming out to the schools right now. If you're thinking about connectivity, I urge you to be cautious with connectivity purchases and make sure that whatever you do is still SIPA compliant and that we're protecting our kids at every angle possible. We also know some schools are being very innovative with use of their technologies. So reach out to me if you want to learn more about what some schools may be doing or some lessons learned. So shoot me an email or anyone on my team. We can help you out. We can help you get through vetting folks and finding out what's best practices, what's research-based. And if we can't figure it out, we'll work on it together and we'll figure out something with you guys. So we're excited about the amount of funds that are coming, but we also want to be very cautious and plan long-term. Let's really think now, what is really going to carry me down 2, 3, 4, 5 years and do the best for the kids in the current situation and for the unknown. So thanks, Deb, for giving me a chance to talk, and I look forward to hearing from you guys.
Thanks, Dawn. So on the next slide, I'm just giving you the communication connectivity with Suzanne, with Dr. Pride, with Dawn, so that if you have questions about those particular areas, if you're thinking in your addendum application, how are we going to utilize our funds, then let us help you think through any of that. If any of it is giving you a challenge or you just have questions, hey, what if I did this? Can I free up some money over here or do something else? We want to make sure that we're using our funds wisely. One of our other focus areas is systemic procedures. And I'm going to ask Carly Saraceni, we need effective educators, Carly. So what are some suggestions to think through?
Thanks, Ms. Kaufman. Good afternoon, everyone. Some of the thoughts that we can think through, unfortunately, we cannot use these funds for bonuses, but you can use them for COVID leave. And also, this would give us a great chance to rethink those pay structures and using that career continuum, those lead teachers, and just really look at those things that are available. And of course, my staff is very available to help you through this process. So please let us know because we are here to help you think through these. And this gives you a great opportunity to rethink those pay structures. And those excellent teachers in the classroom, this keeps them in the classroom so that we can go forward and know that we will be training starting this spring so that we can help the R&Rs really support our new candidates coming out of the program and our novice teachers, because we want to make sure they're supported the first 3 years. Because as someone said, this year is, it's like everyone is a new teacher and we need to support them. Thank you.
So Carly, that might mean that we're going to have some additional days of professional development. We could even look at sending people to get prepared to work in other areas moving forward. So there's a lot of flexibility with these funds if we've got really good documentation to go along with them.
Especially for those that you're asking to teach out of area and you've put them on an ALP, this would be a great use of funds to help them become certified in that area. We all know that special education teachers is another hard area that's short-staffed. This would be a great opportunity to use those funds to help someone become certified in that area as well.
Or to get several people certified so that they not only can work with those, but maybe even just to improve the skills of the classroom teacher to meet the needs of the students.
Especially looking at those inclusive practices. Yes, we could do that.
That's awesome.
So please do not hesitate to call us. We'll walk you through. And someone asked about pay structures. It's looking at that career continuum and possibly paying teachers that are lead teachers and leading a pod of teachers to possibly have that stipend for that extra work. Also, it's I know we have the initiative Opportunity Culture, and a lot of districts that are participating in that have another pay structure and utilizing these federal funds to pay those extra duties for those lead teachers and master's teachers. So please call us and we'll help you through this process.
Thank you, Ms. Saraceni. So we added a fifth focus area, and actually ESSER 1 funds could have been used to make upgrades, but the U.S. Department of Ed made a focus on bringing this out. And so this plays into the part of, are we in a better place at the other side of this pandemic? And when you look at facilities, the key words here, are we improving the air quality? And are we reducing the transmission of this virus and any virus? So I've asked Tim Kane to talk to us a little bit about what are some of the possibilities regarding facilities as a focus area.
Thank you, Deb, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this opportunity. And it is a great opportunity. As Deb said, the question we need to ask ourselves is, does a project that I undertake improve the indoor air quality? And or does it limit the spread of the contagious disease? So there's lots of questions about, does this qualify or that qualify? But those are the first two questions we need to ask. An example of that would be HVAC upgrades and ventilation and filtration. We also have guidance that will be linked to the application. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. What I want to focus on is down at number 2. This on number 2 here, it really talks about how broad the scope is on this. Inspection, testing, maintenance, repair, replacement, and upgrade projects. So that to improve the indoor air quality. So that covers a lot. So the scope on this is going to be fairly large. One thing that Deb had touched on already, and I want to talk about, is just the importance of documentation on projects. One of the things we're going to require you to do is to put any improvement projects in the master plan. That way we have a documentation and we can track that, but it also helps you as well. But something I want to talk about besides just what qualifies is I just think it's really important, and we think it's important just to be strategic with the dollars, the opportunity here for facilities. And the question I thought of over the weekend was, the question I would want to ask myself is, what improvements can we invest in this district that'll still be effective 10 to 15 years from now? Because as Don has already talked about, if you haven't yet, you probably have, but you should well be receiving all types of contact from all types of vendors selling all types of products having to do with COVID. And we just want to make sure that we're strategic in that and think long-term. We do have 3 summers to do any HVAC projects. So we do have time to think about that. One thing I want to talk about a little bit is on the guidance, and I know my time's limited for now, but on the guidance that we put out, one of the things we wanted to do was to talk about priorities. And so we have it divided by high, medium, and low. And the reason for that is to strongly encourage you to try to take care of the high priority first, which is going to be increasing outside air and increased filtration through HVAC upgrades or replacement. And this increased outside air and increased filtration, all the experts that we have listened to, that we have read, that we have talked with, everybody seems to be saying the same thing. And that is the best thing you can do, not the only thing, but the best thing you can do first is to increase your outside air and increase filtration. And so that could be an HVAC upgrade, or it could be an HVAC replacement. I know there are lots of questions coming in, and y'all reaching out, and I want to help. We want to help in any way we can. If we need to have a separate webinar or meeting to discuss that, we can. But I would just refer you right now to the guidance. And again, closing up, just those two questions we talked about to ask is, does it improve the indoor air quality, this project? And or does it limit the spread of a contagious disease? Because those are the requirements for the funding. And I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Tim. So if you'd like to talk to Carly or Tim or their team, feel free to reach out. As Tim said, we're going to give you a little bit of time to go through the webpage and the application, the addendum to the application. And then if we need to do follow-up, we can. And what I would ask you is to always think about these funds. While there is big, wide range that we can spend these ESSER II funds, we still must be reasonable, necessary, and allocable under the requirements of the CARES Act. And of course, you know, Jane Green is always helpful to help us think through that. And so as we're thinking through that, a couple of just very quick questions just to address. Under ESSER II, LEAs are not responsible for equitable services for non-public schools. If you've been keeping up with that, you know that there is a separate pot of money through GEARS 2 called the EANS money, and that is dedicated to non-public schools. So that has been taken off your plate as an LEA. You will be required to have excellent documentation. So always err on the side of writing down why, as Tim was giving you those great questions to ask. Tim and I've talked about several of those, about maybe I had a room that did not have an air conditioning, and so the air transfer was a 0. And now with a new upgraded HVAC, I'm going to have a new amount of transmissions of air throughout the room each hour. And so we're looking for real documentation to go along with these purchases, because by the time the auditors are coming to look at this, may be different people working in the school. So it's always important that all of that is written down and attached with it. And it is a part of your records retention requirement. If you, which all of you did, you filled out a GEPA statement when you did your first ESSER 1 application. And unless something has changed and you need to upload an updated GEPA statement, the one that you have in the ESSER folder is fine. You don't need to do another one. And then, of course, maintenance of effort remains the same. Jane, is that correct?
That is correct. And I would add that 10% variance does not apply on these funds. I don't know if you had that on your list, Deb, but while you're talking about maintenance of effort, I'll mention that.
That's correct. 10% variance does not apply because you are not having to send in a pre-approved budget. And the reason you don't have to do that is because we have given you budget codes that you have to stay within, and we're asking you to just do that budgeting in eFinance. So I want to come back to our addendum, and I'm actually going to take you there to that page. And if you go to the CARES Act page, there's a couple of ways to get there. One way is always, you can just click right on the Division of Elementary and Secondary Act, Division of Elementary and Secondary Education webpage. You can see the CARES Act funding over here in a little box that's up right now, but you can always find it by clicking on C and pulling up the CARES Act. That's always going to take you to this page. At the top of the page, we have the most updated information. As you can see, information about the Act, the Appropriations Act, the letter from Secretary DeVos, fact sheets, methodology for calculating the allocations, and the most up-to-date information from the U.S. Department of Ed on their ESSER webpage. This information is, I would encourage you to read the information that we have posted on this website. I've tried to boil it down and make it the most information in the least amount of words, but we do require that you do have a budget in eFinance, and that we will monitor these funds. So I'm just telling you ahead of time, when I ask for your documentation, don't look surprised, because I've said it 1,000 times. Please make sure you document why these are COVID-related expenditures, and put those notes in with your expenditures, because we will be asking to see some of those. We went over the focus of the ESSER 2 funds, and then all of the school districts that were eligible for ESSER 1 are eligible for ESSER 2. Those allocations have already been posted on the financial webpage, on their allocations webpage, and that is linked here. The funding codes are linked here. What are the funding codes? And the CARES Act the addendum or application is linked here, and that's, I want to take you there very quickly. So in the application, the addendum, remember this is your just addendum to what you've already done. We're adding on for this second pot of money. You will put in your district name and LEA number, read the certifications very carefully, and make sure that you are agreeing to all of those and can follow those. And then in the focus areas, you can mark all of the focus areas that you plan to budget and expend in. And remember, there's 5. So food security, direct student support, technology, systemic procedures, and facilities. Once you've done that, the superintendent will print their name and sign it and date it, and then ask your federal programs to upload that into Industar in the ESSER folder. Now, one thing I do want to show you on this page, if you'll notice the word guidance here is highlighted, it's hyperlinked, and Tim mentioned that briefly. If you open that document, you will see the guidance from the conversation that he was sharing with you, the high priority, the medium priority, and the low priority. And so I encourage you to go to that page to learn more about the recommendations. So on that page further down, you will see a box about the technical assistance, and that's where I've posted the presentation today, and that is also where we will post a recording of this session. So Dawn, we have a few moments left. Do you want to give us a few questions from our chat, and then know that if you have additional questions, that if you'll let one of us know, we'll try to get them answered. Jane will be working to update our FAQ that's at the very bottom of that page. And if you're in conversation with your co-op directors and decide that we need to have further webinars, let us know what you need to know, and we'll be happy to work through it. So Don, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of facilitate our questions.
Okay, I think we're pretty good on our chat. I think most of those questions have been answered. There are 3 open questions in the Q&A box. One of those is, will the 15% carryover apply to ESSER 2 funds?
No, they will not.
Okay, that's a pretty straightforward answer right there. Next question, do we wait until July 1 to budget, or budget now? And that's a pretty vague question. So would Stacy Smith or someone like on that part like to answer that?
Kathleen may be the best person to help us with that one.
Okay, Kathleen.
They can budget now in this year. It does, the software will allow whichever one you want this fiscal year to put a budget in this new fund, because there won't, there's not any budget there. So what if you want to budget in for 21.
So, and to add to that, Kathleen, they shouldn't be expending if they haven't budgeted. Is that correct?
That's logical, and we can put in to get an error, an exception if that happens.
Great, thank you.
Okay, another question. Can we use ESSER 2 money to offset loss of enrollment?
The use of the ESSER 2 funds would have to be specifically for one of those 5 focus areas. And I don't know how they would account for loss of enrollment through one of those.
And if you have further questions about that, Watson Chapel, just reach out to Jane and she can work through that with you.
I see a question here from Dawn about if a private school overspent ESSER 1 funds, could they reimburse the public school out of their ESSER 2? The answer to that is no.
Okay. Another question, it says, do we know how other states are using their dollars?
Well, I think you've got 2 different questions here. So today we've been focused on how LEAs can use their dollars. And then I don't know if that question is asking how are states using their set aside funds, or how are other districts in other states using their funds?
Hey, Deb,
Uh-huh.
we've got Commissioner wants to chime in here for a second.
Yeah, okay. So a number of states are using these funds more for operations because they have truly seen budget cuts from their state funding. Fortunately, in Arkansas, we have not had to cut any funding. So, you know, we do have a bit of an advantage over a number of these other states. Other states that have not had funding cuts from the state level, their schools are using this much in the same way with the broad categories that were established by Congress. But I would say that there are a lot of ideas getting kicked around, a lot of discussion on the issues around student supports, mental health, that sort of thing that states are using. But there's a lot of literature, a lot of articles out there right now. But ESSER 2 is relatively new. And so I don't know that we have a lot of details on how districts might be spending their ESSER 2 funds differently than how they spent the ESSER 1.
One thing that I would encourage you to do is, I think we saw great results when you pulled together your Ready for Learning committee and you thought about the strategic planning that needs to go on in your district, so that number one, you've met those priorities, that you're looking at learning for all students, learning for subgroups of students, learning for individuals of students. And then you've thought also about the health and safety. So do we have the PPE? Do we have the air quality? Is air quality, is that going to help us have a better environment for our parents and families to feel safe to come to school and learn? So those are the questions I think you're going to be asking yourselves at your local levels to make your decisions about how you plan to spend these funds. But they're finite pots. You've had ESSER 1, we have ESSER 2. There may be the potential for more funds in the future. We don't know yet, but as with any pots of money, we want to spend them wisely for our community and for the students and teachers in our community, so that they are best served, not just now, but for the long haul as well. Dawn, other questions?
Yes, here's a question. What codes do we use to cover salary for staff and substitutes when they are absent due to COVID?
That is under systemic.
That's going to be 191, continuity of operations. And I'd like to mention here too, because there's been several questions about using ESSER 2 funds for the COVID leave. You may also use your ESSER 1 funds, your first cares funds for that.
All right, thank you, Jane. There are more questions coming up in chat and in the Q&A box here, so I'm just trying to make sure I don't ask the same question twice. Can these funds be used for Apex so that we can do credit recovery from the first semester?
If that helps improve your learning loss, just document why you're doing it.
Yeah, I think I want to chime into conversation, and as we're looking at some of the questions, this weekend, Dr. Pfeffer actually sent me a text and said, was brainstorming ideas and actually used the term failure is not an option. And when we think about these funds that are coming in right now, this is really to make that true. You know, what is it for us to be sure to be able to say that failure is not an option for any of our kids? And what are the holes that we have to plug in to mitigate the learning loss that occurred from March of last year through this school year? What do we have to do to re-engage kids that have not been engaged? What do we have to do for our curriculum or the services that we're providing to make sure kids are learning? And so when you're looking at some of the questions as far as curriculum or APEX or building capacities with teachers, the answers are going to be yes. When you start looking outside for facilities as far as air quality, buildings and things like that, most likely the answers are going to be yes. But you still have to answer the basic question, is this going to help fill the hole for why kids aren't learning during this time period? We have been pretty blessed in our state with our educational funding from the state, whereas a lot of other states they're in the hole where we haven't been. And so we are still being funded, and then these federal dollars on top of it is another layer to help provide building that foundation that has kind of crumbled a little bit. So when we're looking at some of these questions, again, it's all about mitigating the learning loss and making sure that in Arkansas, failure is not an option for any kid.
Thank you, Stacy. Another question, would mental health supports qualify under direct student support?
Yes, mental health is mentioned, providing mental health services and supports, program code 183 under direct student support.
Okay, here's a question. We'll keep separate, but all ESSER 1 funds, but must all ESSER 1 funds be expended before spending ESSER 2?
No, they don't have to be, but if they're not obligated within the time allotment, that's funds that aren't going to be available to Arkansas, and we want to use every penny of these funds in the most appropriate way for our students. So no, I mean, you may have a big purchase and not have enough in ESSER 1, and you want to go ahead and get that obligated in ESSER 2. If you've got your addendum in and your budget set up, there's no problem with that. Just keep an eye on, and we're keeping an eye on too, the timeline on the reimbursement so that we don't leave money on the table.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Can school district use ESSER 2 funds to expand facilities such as a cafeteria in order to better social distance?
That one will need a whole lot more details, and we'll need to talk to them privately.
Yeah.
We're gonna need a lot of time to think about that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we've been doing, Dawn, is anytime somebody has one like that, if they're really serious about it, we're setting up a Zoom with like my office and Tim's office to kind of talk through and listen to how that became a priority. And so they need to contact us and let's get a Zoom set up.
Okay, sounds good. Here's one, I'm not sure who this needs to be directed to, but so if there is not legislative action to pass some sort of hold harmless on enrollment decline, would we not be able to use part of this to keep existing staff numbers for when our kids do come back? And it says this seems like it would fall under systemic procedures number 6.
So there is some leeway in under systemic procedures, program code 191, but we probably need to have a conversation with the school district about that and get more detail and see what we can do to help them.
Okay. And Stacy, I think you may have answered this already, but can these funds be used to reduce class size to address achievement gaps? Did you want to say anything else, maybe more pointed to that?
Again, the district just needs to look at all their different funding sources. There are lots of funds that can be used for that. And so it's a possibility. It's about the whole plan for the district. It's hard to answer some of these isolated questions about can we buy this or can we buy that? It's really about your whole plan as a district and about how you're going to mitigate learning loss and how you're going to use these funds to impact teaching and learning for students during this time. So I know that we're going to start collecting the questions that are coming in so that we can answer these in a formal Q&A document that we can put up on our website. Deb, as you've kind of scanned through, or Dawn, is there anyone on there that we think we need to answer live for everyone? Or a lot of these are things that we still have to come in and together as a group work through?
I mean, I think most of them are one-offs where we could probably answer someone direct. And of course, here's one that might be good for the group. Do we need to budget 100% of the funds for this?
So I would encourage you to go ahead and be thinking in the big pots or the big focus areas of how you plan to budget, because there is not the 10% variance. If you're making adjustments based on what the actual costs are, there's no penalty to that. It's just, once again, as we kind of wrap up today, is I cannot stress documentation and records retention enough. The other thing would be sure to reach out and that when you're in doubt in any way, and we're happy to assist you. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As I said, this session is recorded. We'll post it to our website. We'll be working on Q&A. I would reach out to my co-op directors and teacher center coordinators if I have additional questions, so that we can all work together. And if there is a need for a follow-up webinar, we're happy to do that as well, or schedule one-on-one or small group conversations to get to what you really want to know and kind of help you think through those. We will be meeting with various groups. I know Tim's going to be continuing to meet with groups. We're about to get off of here and meet with federal coordinators, and we'll try to get most of the questions answered and or posted in our FRQ. So, Ms. Smith, any last words?
Yeah, so Deb, I just wanted to confirm, I was kind of trying to go through the Q&A to see if there's anything that needed to be specifically answered. And I just wanted to clarify that the addendum to the application that's on the CARES Act page, that's what's due by February 1. And again, that's just acknowledging the big buckets that you'd be spending money in. Okay, it's not asking for a specific budget of it's what are the big buckets that you're going to be spending. A lot of you will end up marking every single one of the big buckets, and that's okay. But that's what's due by the February 1, and you can find that on the CARES Act page that's linked in the commissioner's memo that came out. And this presentation today will also be recorded and is going to be linked as well. Is that correct, Deb? We've had lots of people asking for the slides.
That's correct. The slides are already there on the CARES Act page.
Okay, and we'll continue to be putting out information and gathering information from other districts on what they're doing. I think a lot of people want to know what's everyone else doing with their funds and thinking big picture and innovation, what's next. And those are the types of things that we'll be gathering and being able to share as we move forward. So Deb, thank you and your team. Great job today. Appreciate you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.